My name is Myra Andes. I'm 32. The night my sister's fiancé called my mom trailer park trash, I was already 6 months into building the federal case that would put him in prison. We were standing in the Sterling family's foyer, marble floor, crystal chandelier. My mom in her best denim jacket ironed twice, Trent Sterling in a $400 polo. He thought I couldn't hear him whisper to his groomsmen behind the screen by the bar. He was wrong. My mother is the strongest woman I know. She raised 2 daughters in a 47-acre farm in Berks County, Pennsylvania. After my dad died of a heart attack in 2014, she survived a winter once on canned green beans and pride. And one Saturday in June, the man my sister was going to marry whispered 14 words that started a clock. What I did over the next 6 months and what happened at the altar is something the Berks County Chronicle is still writing about. But the only person who really knew the whole plan was my mom, and even she didn't know all of it. Welcome back to the channel. This is where we tell the slow, satisfying revenge stories, the kind where good people stop being polite and start using the truth. If you're new here, hit subscribe and the bell and drop a comment with one word where you're listening from. I read everyone. Now, back to that foyer. I picked Mom up at the farmhouse at 4 in the afternoon. The dinner started at 6. The drive to Chester County took 40 minutes. She came out onto the porch in the denim jacket she'd ironed and the same navy blouse she'd worn to my law school graduation. Her hair was pinned up. The wedding band from my dad's funeral hung on a thin gold chain around her neck. "Do I look okay?" she asked. "You look like my mom." She smiled and got in the Ford Escape. The sun was low. The fields along Route 422 were that late June green that makes you forget winter exists. We didn't talk much. She knew I was thinking. Mom and I have always been able to be quiet together. What she didn't know was that I'd been pulling title records on the Sterling family for 6 months, that I'd flagged 3 shell LLCs registered to the same reading post office box as Sterling Development Group, that I had a manila folder in the trunk of my car. Not for the dinner, for after. I'd been suspicious from the start. The first time Hannah brought Trent home, Thanksgiving last year, he asked my mom 4 separate questions about the acreage, about the North Pasture access road, about whether the property had ever been surveyed for utilities. He smiled the whole time and called her Mrs. Andes. And Mom thought he was being polite. He wasn't being polite. He was conducting due diligence. I'd been an agricultural land use attorney for 8 years by then. I had a solo practice in reading. Most of my clients were dairy farmers and small landowners fighting easements. I'd seen enough land deals in those 8 years to know exactly what a fishing question sounded like. I never told Hannah. Hannah was in love. Hannah was 27 and had spent her 20s working a paralegal job at my office, paying down student loans, dating men who borrowed money. Trent looked like the answer. By the time we turned into the Sterling driveway, I had a folder in my trunk, not for the dinner, for after. The driveway curved for a 1/4 mile through manicured oaks. A boy in a vest took my keys at the front steps. 24 cars were already parked in the round drive. Range Rovers, Audis, a vintage Mercedes the color of milk. Inside the foyer opened to a great room with 20 FT ceilings, marble floor, a staircase that curled like ribbon. Rosalind Sterling stood by the door, air-kissing women in pearls. "Eliza," she said, taking my mother's hands. "What a darling jacket, so practical." "Thank you," Mom said. She didn't take the bait. She has never taken a piece of bait in her life. Whitfield Sterling, Sr. came up next. He was 62, silver at the temples, wearing a navy blazer with brass buttons. His handshake landed too firm. His eyes went to my mom's hands and stayed half a beat too long. Her hands are calloused. Her palms are wider than mine. She has tapped maple trees for 30 years. "Mrs. Zennies," he said, "we've been looking forward to meeting you." Likewise, Mom said. Hannah appeared at the top of the staircase in a champagne-colored cocktail dress. She was glowing. She was also, and I caught it the moment she came down, wearing the thinnest expression of doubt I had ever seen on my sister's face. A flicker behind the eyes, like the candle had moved. I filed that away. I excused myself to the powder room and took the long way back, past a wall of family photos. One of them stopped me. Whitfield Sr. shaking hands with a man in a flannel shirt in front of the Berks County courthouse. The brass plate underneath read with Commissioner Earl Mallister, August 2023. Earl Mallister, the county commissioner who voted on every land use permit in our district. I knew his name from 12 client files. I filed that away, too. By the time I rejoined Mom in the great room, I had 3 things on my mental list. The photograph, the way Whitfield Sr. had looked at my mom's hands and my sister's eyes. 3 things, none of them good. Cocktails were on the back terrace. Servers in white shirts carried trays of champagne and miniature crab cakes. Mom held a glass of seltzer. She doesn't drink at strange houses. I told her I'd be right back and slipped inside for the bathroom. The downstairs powder room was occupied. I cut through the den toward the second one off the kitchen. There's a folding screen near the wet bar, Japanese gold leaf. And as I came around it, I could hear 2 men's voices on the other side. Trent and a groomsman named Brad. Trent had a tumbler of something dark in his hand. His tie was loosened. His voice was already a little wet around the edges. "Christ, man," he said. "Her mom looks like she belongs in a trailer park." Brad laughed. "Hannah's lucky she got cleaned up before college. I keep waiting for the mom to start talking about coupons or something." Brad laughed again. Trent took a sip. "Yeah, well, 12 more months. I went still, not frozen, still, there's a difference. 12 more months. Hannah had met Trent 8 months ago. The wedding was in 6. That made it a roughly 12-month window from start to finish. Window to what? I stepped back behind the screen so neither of them saw me. Walked the long way around through the dining room. Came out onto the terrace from the opposite door. Mom was standing by the fire pit alone. The seltzer glass was still full in her hand. Her face had dropped. Not crumpled, dropped. The way a piece of fabric drops when you let go of one end. A server had walked past her with a laughing tray and she had heard something. She didn't have to hear Trent specifically. She had heard the laugh and she had known. She turned to me as I walked up. "Honey," she said, "I think I'll wait in the car." I reached out and took her arm calmly. The way you take the arm of someone you love when you're about to tell them not to flinch. "Don't go yet, Mom." I said I already have a plan. She looked at me. For a long second, she didn't say anything. She didn't ask what the plan was. That was the part that broke me. I walked her back into the great room with my hand on the small of her back. She moved the way she always moves, straight, unhurried. She touched the chain at her neck once, ran her thumb along the band on it, and lowered her hand. I had seen her do that gesture 1,000 times. It's the gesture she makes when she's studying herself. I had never quite understood it until that night. She was bringing my dad to the room with her. "Eliza, there you are," Rosalind saying. "We're sitting down." 28 guests sat at a single long table, lemon and pewter centerpieces, wine in 3 glasses per setting. Mom and I were placed beside Hannah and across from Whitfield Sr. and his wife. Trent sat one chair down between his mother and a great aunt. Whitfield Sr. rose for the toast. "To our 2 families," he said, "welcome to the home you'll be visiting often. May our 2 great families and our properties grow together for many years." A few people laughed politely. Mom's expression did not change. I noted 3 things about that toast. He had said properties, not assets, not joint life. Properties. He had repeated the word families in a way that suggested he was correcting himself. And he had looked directly at the painting above the mantel, an aerial photograph of farmland. When he said, "Grow together," the proof wasn't in his toast. The proof was in the trunk of my car. The proof was in the LLC filing I had pulled 3 weeks earlier. The proof was waiting across the table. Hannah's eyes met mine. She held them for 2 full seconds, then her lip moved barely. The way a person's lip moves when they're trying not to cry in public. She didn't know everything yet, but she knew enough. The dinner ended at 10:14. By 10:20, walking out to the valet stand. My phone buzzed in my clutch. It was Hannah. 3 words, "We need to talk." I told Mom I'd be a minute. I told her tote in the passenger seat. I walked to the side of the driveway where the catering trucks were parked and where the valet stand couldn't see me. And Hannah came around the corner 3 minutes later in her champagne dress and bare feet carrying her heels. She didn't say hello. "Myra," she said, "I think Trent doesn't love me." Her voice was thin, not crying yet. Thin. "I think he wants something else. I've been finding receipts." "I know," I said. "I've known for 6 months. I didn't tell you because if he caught wind of it, he'd panic." She stared at me. "What? I'm sorry. 6 months. I needed time to be sure, and I needed time to build it, right?" She didn't say anything for a long moment. The catering truck's freezer hummed. "What did you build?" she finally said. I told her about the LLC. I told her about the title records I had pulled. I told her about the question Trent had asked Mom at Thanksgiving, the one nobody else had noticed, about the North Pure Access Road. I told her about the photograph in the hallway of Whitfield Sr. and Commissioner Mallister. Her face was changing as I spoke. The hurt was draining. Something cooler was taking its place. "Myra," she said, "I want to walk down the aisle." "What?" "I want him at the altar. I want his parents in the front row. I want 200 witnesses when this breaks." I blinked at her, my quiet, gentle paralegal sister, the one I'd always thought of as the soft one. "That's a lot of room," I said. "That's the point." She looked toward the driveway, toward where our mother was sitting in the passenger seat of my Ford Escape, with the chain at her neck and the calloused hands and the dignity of someone who had just decided not to cry in front of strangers. "Myra," Hannah said, "I'm a paralegal. I know how to take photos of documents." The wedding was 6 months away. "Okay," I said, "let's build." The drive back to the farm took 42 minutes. Mom didn't ask why I'd been at the catering truck for 10 minutes. She didn't ask about Hannah. She just sat in the passenger seat and watched the cornfields go by under a thin June moon. I'd known her my whole life. I knew her quiet shapes. This one was the shape of a woman waiting to be told the truth. "Mom," I said, 15 minutes into the drive, "I'd rather just lose the dinner than fight rich people." She turned her head. "What? That's what you said in the car coming over. I heard you mumble it. I just want to say, Mom, we're not fighting them for me." I gripped the wheel. "We're fighting them for the farm." She didn't say anything for a long moment. The road climbed up out of Chester County and into the dark hills, past the dairy on Route 23, past the abandoned silo Dad and I used to wave at when I was small. "What do you mean?" she finally said. "I'll explain when I'm ready. I need a few more pieces, but I need you to do one thing for me. Smile at the bridal shower. Smile at the rehearsal. Don't say a word about tonight to anyone. Not to Hannah's fiancé. Not to anyone." She nodded once. "I trust you." The trust between Mom and me is decades deep. It comes from a kitchen on Cedar Hollow Road, from braiding my hair before second grade, from sitting beside me at my dad's funeral when I was 20 and not letting go of my hand for 4 hours. She has trusted me with the things that matter. "Honey," she said as we turned onto the gravel drive. "Yeah, your dad would have liked you tonight." I blinked at the windshield. I did not let the tears fall. That was a thing for later. For now, there was work. The farm wasn't a metaphor. The farm was the entire reason. By morning, Mom would understand, but not yet. Saturday morning, 6:30. I sat at my kitchen table in reading with a mug of coffee and a manila folder open in front of me. My father, Louis's, died of a heart attack on a Tuesday in March of 2014. He was 56 years old. He had been splitting firewood by the side door of the barn. He left my mother 47 acres off-working farmland that his own father had bought in 1948 for $94 an acre. The original deed was framed in the hallway of the farmhouse. I'd looked at it every Sunday of my life. Mom's annual income from the farm was $58,000. $20,000 came from a CSA box program. 60 families in Berks County who paid for weekly produce shares from May through October. The rest came from maple syrup, 80 tap trees, 240 gallons of finished syrup a year, sold at the Lancaster Farmers Market and online to a small subscription list. She lived simply. The mortgage was paid off in 2011. The truck was a 2007 F-150. She heated with wood in the winter. She loved the farm. I knew she would die on it. I opened the folder. On the top was a printout from the Pennsylvania Bureau of Land Records pulled 3 weeks earlier on a hunch. An LLC called Heritage Acres Holdings had filed a notice of interest on the parcel directly adjacent to my mother's eastern fence line. It had been filed in February. The parent entity listed on page 2 was Sterling Development Group. Trent had asked Mom questions about the North Pasture Road at Thanksgiving. Hannah had met Trent 2 weeks before that. The proposal had come in May. The wedding was scheduled for December, 12 months, start to finish. In January, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation publicly announces its 3-year construction schedule, including every January the schedule for highway expansions. That was the window. That was the plan. Hannah came over Sunday afternoon. She wore jeans and the gray cardigan I'd bought her for her last birthday and brought a deli sandwich for each of us. She also brought her laptop and a small leather notebook with a pen clipped to it. We sat at the kitchen table. I cleared the folder to one side. Here's what we need, I said. 4 pieces. State due pre-public planning documents. Any internal memo that proves the I-78 East extension is in the works. Sterling Development corporate filings, every LLC under the parent, every subsidiary Earl Mallister's commission voting record on land use permits, and the prenuptial agreement that Trent's lawyer is going to send you. She wrote them down. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can get number 4 when it comes, she said. I can probably get parts of number 2. Trent leaves printouts on his desk. He's careless. What about his email? He prints things. He doesn't trust the cloud. Old money paranoia. I looked at her. My sister, 27 years old, paralegal, 4 years at my law office, calm, methodical, pulling a pen from a leather notebook. How long have you been suspicious of him? 8 weeks. He asked me to sign a power of attorney to handle our joint legal matters. I told him I'd look it over with you. He said he didn't want lawyers in the marriage. That was the first thing. What else? He asked twice about Mom's will. Whether she'd updated it after Dad died, whether the farm passed to me and you jointly or to the estate. He framed it as estate planning. It wasn't estate planning. It was inventory. Hannah, yeah, you should have told me. I was going to. I just didn't want to be wrong. I laid both hands flat on the table. Okay, code phrase. When I text, how's the centerpiece? That means check his desk that night. Photograph everything. Date stamps on, geotag on. She nodded. Then she pulled out her phone. Myra, I already have something. She turned the phone toward me. 14 photographs. The first one was a manila folder lying open on Trent's desk. The tab read in Target Parcels. Target Parcels. I scrolled. The second photograph was an aerial image of my mother's farm. The 47 acres along the eastern fence line had been outlined in red Sharpie. Handwritten annotations in the margin read $3,200 per acre purchase. Estimated right-of-way premium $180,000 per acre. Net $8.4 million. $8.44 million. I read the number 3 times. The first time it was just a number. The second time it was rage. The third time it was a column in an indictment. The next photograph was a printed email. Trent to WS Senior dated 3 months ago. Subject line update going well. She's already attached. Mom likes the down-home angle. Should be locked in by June. She was Hannah. Locked in was a marriage and a prenup and a property transfer. Mom likes the down-home angle was Rosalind's plan to play warm with the farmer's widow. Hannah swallowed. Her hand was shaking a little around the phone. I want to throw up, she said. Don't, I said. Keep eating dinner with him. Keep laughing at his jokes. We're not done. We have the motive now. We need 3 more things and we need a witness who matters. Witness. FBI. She looked at me. You know somebody. I went to law school with somebody. She's at the Philadelphia Field Office Public Corruption Unit. I'll reach out tomorrow. Hannah set the phone down, looked at the ceiling, looked at me. How long do I have to keep pretending to be in love with him? 8 months. She closed her eyes. Then she opened them. Okay. She stood up. Washed her hands at the sink, dried them on the dish towel. She turned around. I already have a plan, Myra, she said. I want it at the altar. The phrase echoed back at me from the Sterling driveway. The plan had a place now. The plan had a date. Late July, a Saturday morning, 91 degrees and bright. I drove out to the farm to help Mom with the mid-season maple inventory, counting taps, checking the lines, replacing any spiles that had cracked over the winter. She came out of the back door in her field boots and a sun-faded t-shirt. Her hair was up. She had a clipboard. "Honey," she said, "come look at the fence line first." We walked east, past the kitchen garden, past the 2 ponds, past the rusted old gate where my dad used to lean and drink coffee on summer mornings. The eastern fence line ran along the back 47, the parcel his father had bought in 1991 with money they had eaten beans for 2 years to save. 3 orange survey ribbons fluttered in the breeze. They were tied to wooden stakes that had been driven into the ground just outside the fence, but on the side that touched her property. Each ribbon was about 18 in long plastic, bright orange, spray painted with a code I recognized, DP State Department of Transportation Pre-Irve. Mom looked at me. "I never gave anyone permission to survey," she said. "Did the county notify you?" "No." I pulled my phone and took a photograph of each ribbon. I marked the GPS coordinates. I noted the date and time. I added them to the folder in my head and to the folder in my trunk. I called Earl Mallister's office on the drive back to my house. His secretary picked it up. I asked breezily whether the county had approved a survey on the property. "Oh," she said, "I think that was a courtesy survey from the state. Commissioner approved it last month, approved it for private property without owner consent. That isn't a courtesy. That's trespass." That's the moment this stopped being personal. That's the moment it started being federal. You don't put stakes in another person's dirt without permission. That's how I knew they had already started taking. Maya Caldwell and I sat across each other in law school in 2014. We did Civro together. We did evidence together. We did 3 semesters of clinic together. She went federal and I went solo. We stayed close. I emailed her Sunday night. Subject line, "Need to buy you breakfast about a thing, not a client thing." She wrote back within 10 minutes. Saturday, 7 a.m., the diner in Pottstown. I drove out the next Saturday with the folder. We sat in a back booth. She ordered the Western omelet. I ordered black coffee. I slid the folder across. She read for 15 minutes without saying a word. Her omelet went cold. When she got to the printed email locked in by June, she stopped chewing the toast and reread the sentence twice. "Myra," she said, "yeah, this is wire fraud, I know. The email crosses state lines. The LLC structure suggests intent. If you can confirm Commissioner Mallister has insider knowledge of an unannounced state due project, that's also federal public corruption." She closed the folder. "I need 3 more things before I can open a real file. 1, documented voting pattern from Mallister, especially on land permits in the Hog 78 corridor. 2, the actual prenuptial agreement. 3, ideally Whitfield Sr. confirming the scheme in writing, in person, or through a paper trail. We'll have all 3 by November. That's a lot of confidence. My sister's the inside person." Maya took a long sip of her coffee. "How old is your sister?" 27, paralegal, 5 years experience. "Mine," Maya nodded, slow nod. "I'll open a preliminary file Monday. Don't tell your mom, don't tell anyone." She stood to leave. Then she sat back down. "If you bring me a smoking gun before the wedding," she said, "I can have arrest warrants ready that morning." I didn't smile. I just nodded. She paid the check. Late August, Hannah went up to the Sterling family lake cabin in the Poconos with Trent for the weekend. Friday afternoon, she texted me from the driveway. Whitfield Sr. just pulled in unannounced. I texted back, eyes open. She wrote later that night that she had been on the back deck reading when she heard them in Trent's office. The window was open. The 2 men were not whispering. They were arguing about a deadline. Whitfield Sr. said the word January twice. She waited until they went down to the dock for cigars. Then she excused herself to the upstairs bathroom and stopped in Trent's office on the way back. The desk had a humidor on top. Below it, a locked drawer. The key was in the pencil cup. Of course it was. She slid the drawer open. A manila folder 3 and thick labeled in marker. I-78 E/NIS/Phase 2. She opened it. She photographed every page, 17 pages. She placed it back in exactly the angle she found it. She put the key back in the cup. She returned to the back deck. She drove home Sunday afternoon. She texted me from a rest stop on Route 81. I have it. Sunday night, 11 p.m., I sat at my kitchen table and printed all 17 pages from her cloud. Page 1 was a state internal planning memo marked pre-public commissioner review, only dated April. It outlined a proposed extension of Interstate 78 east through Berks County, with a right-of-way easement running through my mother's back 47 acres. Page 2 was a draft purchase agreement. Sterling Development Group as buyer, the Anise parcel as seller. Purchase price $3,200 an acre. Pages 3 through 15, where the prenup draft Hannah hadn't been sent yet. Page 16 was a profit projection net to Sterling Development after right-of-way resale $8.4 million. Page 17 was a yellow legal pad sheet in Whitfield Sr.'s handwriting. Earl gets 15%. I sat there for an hour without moving. That last page put him in prison. I just didn't know it yet. Maya met me Tuesday at noon at her office in Philadelphia. I brought the 17 pages, the ribbon photographs, the title chain on the property, and a printout of Earl Mallister's voting record on land use permits over the last 3 years. He had voted yes on every Sterling-affiliated application, every single one. 22 votes, 0 recusals, despite being Whitfield Sr.'s first cousin. She read for 45 minutes. When she finished, she stacked the pages and tapped them straight on the conference table. "Myra," she said, "this is the case. I know. Wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, honest services fraud, bribery of a public official. The handwritten note alone is the conviction page. How do you want to do it? You tell me." I sat back. The wedding, December 14th. 200 guests, 3 stirrings under one roof. My sister at the altar. An FBI agent planted as her +1. Sheriff Holland of Berks County in the Sacre. Earl Mallister gets a separate arrest at his home in Reading at the same hour. She watched me for a moment. "You want maximum reputational destruction. I want the truth to break in the room where they plan to bury it." She didn't speak for 10 seconds. Her eyes moved to the window, then back. "All right, I'll be at the wedding, plus one of Hannah's. We've already shared a college pretext for her bridesmaids. She copied every document. I kept the originals in my manila folder. The folder was no longer my investigation file. It was the federal evidence packet. Maya had a second copy in a safe at the Philadelphia field office by Wednesday morning. I drove home Tuesday night and cried for the first time in 8 months. Not from sadness, from the cleanness of what was coming. There were still 97 days until the wedding. There were still 2 pieces missing, the prenup itself and a county commissioner who was about to lie to me on video. The bridal shower was the second Saturday in September at the Sterling estate. 60 guests, pink balloons in 3 shades, a backyard tent, Rosalind hosting in a white linen dress with diamond stud earrings the size of peas. Mom wore a navy dress from Talbot's that I had helped her pick out the week before. She wore the pearls Aunt Bate had given her in 1989. She looked beautiful, not in the Sterling sense, in the Berks County sense. I drove her over. We arrived at 100 p.m. Rosalind greeted us at the patio steps with a champagne flute and a kiss air for each cheek. "Eliza, you clean up so well. Hannah told us you were a farmer. We were picturing well, you know." The gala board friends nearby laughed politely. Mom didn't pause. "I'm still a farmer," she said. "I just changed my shoes." The laughter petered out. 2 of Rosalind's friends turned away. One of them, a woman named B, who I would later learn ran a horse rescue, actually smiled at my mom. A small smile, a real one. I steered Mom toward the foodable. The next 2 hours were a parade of women asking her about the farm. 2 of Hannah's bridesmaids, Sarah and Kelsey, wanted to come visit. They asked about the maple operation. Mom described the sap house, the evaporator, the way the first run in February smells like the inside of a candle. She was in that moment the calmest and most luminous person at the party. Across the lawn, Hannah caught my eye, inclined her head toward the house. I followed her 5 minutes apart. In the upstairs guest bathroom, she handed me her phone, a photograph of a piece of stationery from Rosalind's writing desk, a guest list with handwritten notes beside each name. Beside Eliza and 2 words, "Wear modest." I looked up at my sister. "Save it," I said. "We'll print it in the slideshow." She did not laugh. Neither did I. We walked back downstairs separately. I made an appointment at Commissioner Earl Mallister's office for the 3rd Wednesday in October. I had a real reason. A dairy farmer client of mine in Maxitani was fighting an access easement, and I needed to discuss permitting timelines with the commission. It was the kind of 15-minute meeting I'd had 100 times. Earl met me in the front office. Flannel shirt, coffee in a foam cup, photos of his grandkids on the wall behind him. We talked about my client for 10 minutes. He was friendly. He was helpful. He knew the easement law. Then I let it casually drop. "Earl, between you and me, have you been hearing anything about Route 78? McLions keep asking." He didn't blink. "No," he said, "no rumors, nothing on the books. States is pretty quiet right now." He said it too quickly. He said it too cleanly. He pivoted. "How's your sister marrying that Sterling boy? Nice family." I smiled. "Very nice." I walked out, got to the parking lot, sat in the Ford Escape for a minute with my hands on the wheel. He had just lied to a member of the Pennsylvania bar. He had done it in the lobby of a public building. The lobby of a public building has a security camera. The camera had a date stamp. The audio was clear. I sent Maya the timestamp and the meeting receipt. She wrote back within an hour. "That's lie to a federal investigator the day we make this active. Add it to the file." I closed the message. Earl had smiled at me the way men smile when they are sure they are winning. The way the rich uncle smiles at the niece who has no idea what her own birthday is worth. I let him. I drove home and added one more page to the folder. The prenup arrived in Hannah's hands by overnight FedEx from a Philadelphia law firm on the 22nd of October. She brought it directly to my office the next morning. I read it at my desk with her standing across from me. 14 pages, standard language for 9 of them. Then I reached section 4.2. Spouse Hannah and Sterling shall convey or assign within 90 days of marriage any interest acquired or to be acquired in real property in Berks County, Pennsylvania, including by inheritance, gift, or familial transfer to a jointly held LLC of which spouse Trent Sterling shall be 51% managing member, 51% controlling interest, conveyed within 90 days. Inheritance specifically named. In other words, if mom died and mom is 64 and works outdoors year-round in a state that has Lyme disease, Hannah's inherited share of the farm would belong to Trent within 3 months. It was the entire scheme written into a clause. "Hannah," I said, "you sign nothing." I already told him I'd sign at the ceremony. He liked that. He called it a beautiful trust gesture. I looked at her. "You did what?" I told him I'd sign at the ceremony in front of the priest. He said his lawyer would have it in his breast pocket. I sat back in my chair. "Hannah, do you understand what you just did? He's going to walk down the aisle carrying the document that convicts him. You scare me sometimes." "Good." She left the prenup on my desk, walked out, went back to her work in the next room. Her shoulders did not shake. I sat there for a long time looking at the clause. Trent Sterling thought he was going to outing. He was going to walk down an aisle with the receipt for his own conviction folded inside his jacket. The clock was at 53 days. Pause for 1 second. I know some of you are listening to this on a drive somewhere, or while you're folding laundry, or maybe while your mom is in your kitchen right now. If she is, give her a hug after this video. And if anyone has ever made your mom feel small at a dinner she didn't ask to be at, drop the word mom in the comments. I read everyone. Subscribe so you don't miss the wedding scene. It's the next 20 minutes. Now back to it. The last weekend in November, 8 days before the wedding. Mom drove to my house unannounced at 4:00 in the afternoon. Her hands were shaking when she came in the door. "Myra," she said, "I can't do it." She sat at my kitchen table, took off her coat, looked at the folder I had set out 2 hours earlier because I'd seen this coming. I can't watch Hannah stand at an altar with that man. Can't smile at his mother. I'm going to give myself away. Honey, I want to call it off. I want to drive to Hannah's apartment tonight and tell her to walk. I poured her coffee. I sat down across from her. Mom, I have to tell you everything now. I laid out all 17 pages from Trent's drawer. I laid out the ribbon photographs. I laid out the email trail with Whitfield Sr. I told her about Maya Caldwell, about Sheriff Holland, about the arrest timing. She read slowly. She sipped her coffee. She read again. Then she looked up. He really said I belong in a trailer park. Yes. She set the folder down with both hands, folded them on the table, looked at me, and then she said the thing I think about every time anyone insults a stranger in public. Wait for it. Because what came next was the line that made my mother again. Your father bought that back 47 in the spring of 1991. She said, he paid $1,100 an acre. We ate beans for 2 years. She did not raise her voice. She didn't have to. They will not have it. I sat there with my coffee getting cold and watched my mother become the woman she had been before my dad died. The woman who had walked into the bank in 2012 and renegotiated the maple syrup contract with the wholesaler who had been underpaying her for 6 years. The woman who had stood in front of the school board in 1998 and told them she would not be moving her daughters out of the district. The woman who had once made a county appraiser cry. I'll smile at her wedding, Mom said. I'll stand next to her at the altar. I'll wear pearls. And when you tell me to look at the back of the church, I'll look. Mom, what does looking at the back mean? She touched the chain at her neck, ran her thumb along the band. That's where your dad's family always sat. I'll know he's there. I cried this time, not loud, not the kind of cry that asks to be comforted, just the kind that comes when you realize your mother is the kind of woman who does not have to be told the plan because she has been the plan the whole time. She reached across the table and held my hand. Her hand had calluses on it. Mine did not. We held each other's hands and didn't say anything for 2 minutes. Then she said, What time do you need me on the 14th? 12:30. I'll pick you up. Be on the porch. I'll be on the porch. She stood. She put on her coat. She drove home. 8 days, 200 guests, 3 stirrings, 1 commissioner, 1 altar. The clock had started. The rehearsal dinner was the Friday night before the wedding. The Sterling estate, 40 people, a round table seating chart with calligraphy, place cards, lobster, felt, a 6-tier champagne tower. Trent stood up before dessert for a toast. He was already 2 glasses in. To my beautiful bride and her charming family, he said, We're so excited to fold them into our portfolio. Pause. I mean our family. Light laughter around the table. Whitfield Sr. barely covered a smirk by drinking water. Rosalind put her hand on his forearm in the way that wives do when they want to say, Please, besutler in public. Hannah leaned into Trent and kissed his cheek. Her eyes found mine across the room. They were steady, not angry. Steady, like a woman who had already memorized the floor plan. I drove home around 10:00. Mom had stayed for 40 minutes and then driven back to the farm in her own truck. The route home took me past the eastern edge of her property. I slowed the escape and turned my high beams on across the back 47. There were 6 orange ribbons now. Where there had been 3 in July, there were 6 in December. And 3 of them were tied to wooden stakes that had been driven into the actual pasture. Inside the fence line, 5 FT onto her property. Trespass, intentional, documented. I parked on the shoulder of Cedar Hollow Road and walked out into the field in my dress shoes. I photographed each stake. I logged the coordinates. I sent the album to Maya at 11:47 that night. Her reply came in at 11:53. We have enough. Warrant signed tomorrow morning. Earl gets picked up at his reading address at 1:55 p.m. We move at the church at 2:00. I drove home, took a shower, laid out my black dress for the morning, slept 4 hours. At 5:47 a.m., my phone buzzed again. It was Maya. Sheriff Holland confirms ready. The day had started. By 6:00 a.m., I was at my kitchen table again with coffee and a yellow legal pad. I had a checklist. Maya arriving at the church by 1:15 p.m. RSVP plus one of Hannah's on the official guest list under her real name, blending in as a college friend. Nav address, Sheriff Holland, parked half a mile from St. Andrew's Episcopal in an unmarked car with 2 deputies coming in through the sacristy door at exactly 2:00 p.m. if Hannah triggered the signal. Earl Mallister being picked up at his reading address at 1:55 p.m. by FBI and reading police 5 minutes before the ceremony began. State Due Investigator Sarah Pawlowski in Harrisburg, standing by to receive the I-78E pre-public memo as soon as Maya could hand it off post-arrest. Hannah wearing the wire her FBI handler had set up that morning, hidden in the bodice of her dress, carrying the prenup in a small velvet portfolio in her bridal bouquet bag. Mom being picked up at 12:30 p.m. by me. Pearls, wedding band on chain. Me black dress, Mom's other pearl earrings, borrowed lipstick, a manila folder in a tote bag. The folder was a backup now. Maya had the original. Sheriff Holland had a copy. Sarah Pawlowski had a copy. The folder I carried into the church was symbolic. It was the folder I had been building since June. It was the folder my hands had touched every night for 6 months. I wasn't going to leave it at home. At 12:30, I pulled into the gravel drive at the farm. Mom was on the porch. Pearls, the chain at her neck, a long wool coat over a navy dress. She looked like a queen. I got out of the car and held the door open for her. St. Andrew's Episcopal sits on a hill in Chester Springs. Old stone, vatted ceiling, a nave that holds 210 people. The choir loft above the entrance, a side door off the sacristy that opens into the parish hall. The bridal suite was in the parish hall. I parked at 110. Mom and I walked across the lawn to the side entrance. Inside, the church smelled like beeswax and Christmas pine. The string quartet was tuning. The guests were already arriving. Whitfield Sterling Sr. and Rosalind sat in the front pew on the groom's side. Diamond's cashmere overcoats draped on the pew. He kept checking his phone. He frowned. He checked again. He was waiting for Earl. Earl wasn't coming. Maya was already inside. Pew 12, bride in a navy dress with a small clutch. She caught my eye as I walked Mom to the front pew. Imperceptible nod. I nodded back. Sheriff Holland was somewhere behind the sacristy door. I trusted that. I left Mom seated in the front row, kissed her cheek, and went back to the bridal suite. Hannah was in her dress. Vera Wang ivory simple bodice. Her bridesmaids fluttered around her. She looked at me through the mirror. He gave me the prenup this morning, she said. He said to tuck it in my bouquet bag and sign after the vows. You have it. Velvet portfolio front pocket and the wire on. Maya tested it from the parking lot, clear audio. I held her shoulders from behind. We looked at each other in the mirror. Hannah, yeah, I'm proud of you. She nodded once. She didn't cry. The bridesmaids were watching, so neither of us did. Out in the nave, Trent Sterling walked in at 158 with his groomsman, Brad, and took his place at the altar. He smiled at the priest. He straightened his tie. He did not know that too minutius earlier. His father's cousin Earl had been taken from his living room in handcuffs. The organ began at 2:00 p.m. exactly. Hannah came down the aisle on her own. She had told me at 23 years old after our dad died that no one would ever walk her down an aisle except herself. She had kept that promise. She walked slow, steady, her bouquet in her left hand, the velvet portfolio inside the bouquet bag against her thumb. Mom and I stood in the front pew. Mom's hand was on the chain at her neck, her thumb running along the band. Once, twice, 3 times. Hannah reached the altar, took Trent's hand. He grinned. He looked smug. He looked like a man who had won. The priest began. He read from the first letter to the Corinthians, love is patient. Love is kind. The standard. Then he set the book down and said the line that opens the formal portion of an episcopal ceremony. Marriage is a sacred covenant not entered into lightly but reverently, soberly, and in the fear of God. A beat. If anyone here present knows any reason why these two should not be lawfully joined together, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The pause 2 seconds 3-4 Hannah turned. She did not turn to Trent. She turned to face the congregation. 200 guests, camera phones already coming out. The string quartet looking confused. Trent's smile started to slip. Hannah. His voice was small. She did not look at him. Before I say yes, she said, and her voice carried over the wire and out through the church PA system the parish administrator had set up for her processional music. I want to share something with all of you. Whitfield Sr. started to stand from the front pew. Maya in pew 12 also stood. He did not see her. Hannah took a manila folder from her maid of honor's hand. Her own hands did not shake. She opened it. On October 22nd of this year, Hannah said, her voice steady and projected, my fiancé's lawyer sent me a prenuptial agreement. Section 4.2 requires me to convey any inherited real property to a jointly held LLC of which Trent Sterling holds 51%. A murmur began rolling through the pews. Like the first wind before weather, Trent reached for her arm. Hannah stepped back. 2 clean steps. On August 19th, she continued, I found documents in Trent's home office indicating Sterling Development Group intended to purchase my mother's 47-acre farm for $3,200 an acre and resell it as right-of-way to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for the year's 78 East Extension, a project that has not yet been publicly announced. She let that one breathe. Rosalind stood up from the front pew. What is she doing? Whitfield Sr. was already on his feet. Hannah, stop this now. Hannah did not stop. The estimated profit was $8.4 million, gasps. Real ones. 3 or 4 guests had their phones up recording openly. Hannah lifted a single sheet of paper from the folder. Yellow legal pad. Trent's father's handwriting. This is a note from Whitfield Sterling Sr.'s office. It reads, Earl gets 15%. Earl is Commissioner Earl Mallister of Berks County. She looked at her watch. At 1:55 p.m. this afternoon, the FBI executed an arrest warrant at Commissioner Mallister's home in Raiding. He has been in federal custody for the last 7 minutes. The church went quiet. Trent's mouth opened and closed. Hannah folded the paper and set it on the altar railing. She looked at the priest. Father, I'm sorry. I'm canceling this wedding. I'm ending this engagement, and I'm doing it in this room because I needed 200 witnesses. The priest's face had gone gray. He nodded once. Whitfield Sr. lunged for the folder. He did not make it 3 steps. Maya stood up in pew 12 and walked to the center aisle. She did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. Whitfield Sterling, Sr., I'm Special Agent Maya Caldwell with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Public Corruption Unit. I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, honest services fraud, and bribery of a public official. Whitfield Sr. stopped mid-step. His face was the color of brick. This is a wedding, he said. You cannot. This is a wedding. I can, sir. The sacristy door opened. Sheriff Holland came out in his uniform, hat under his arm, and 2 Berks County deputies came in behind him. Cuffs, quiet movement. The deputies walked Whitfield Sr. into the side aisle and turned him toward the wall. Maya turned to Trent. Trent Sterling, you are also under arrest. The charges are wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and conspiracy to commit bribery. You have the right to remain silent. Trent looked at his mother. His mouth was open. Mom, do something. Rosalind sank back into the front pew. Her hand went up to her face. The diamond earrings caught the late afternoon light coming through the rose window. She looked at her son, just looked at him. The way a woman looks at a son she has been protecting for 31 years and now cannot protect. She didn't argue. She didn't speak. She didn't defend him. She knew that was all of her near sympathy that I was willing to give her in my own head. And I gave it to her once and then I took it back. Sheriff Holland came up to Rosalind and said quietly, Ma'am, you're a person of interest. We'll be following up. She nodded once, did not cry. Hannah walked off the altar. She came down to the front pew, took our mother's hand, and stood between us in silence. A deputy began escorting Rosalind Sterling toward the side door for questioning at the federal field office. She had to pass the front pew to get there. She stopped beside Mom. Her mascara was running 2 tracks. Her hands were trembling around her clutch. The gala chair of 3 Pennsylvania charities, the woman who had handwritten "Wear Modest" beside my mother's name 3 months earlier. Eliza, she said, her voice cracked. Eliza, please tell them this is a misunderstanding. Mom did not speak. She looked at Rosalind. That was all. Her hands stayed folded in front of her, calloused hands, pearl earrings, the wedding band still in the chain at her neck. Her thumb had stopped running along it. It was resting. She did not need to say a word. I stepped forward, one step. I spoke softly, but the stone walls of St. Andrew's Episcopal carry sound the way an old church is built to carry sound, and every person in the nave heard me. My mother belongs anywhere she wants to be. I said, "You're the one being escorted out." The church went still. Rosalind blinked once, twice. Her mouth opened, it closed. The deputy touched her elbow. She turned. She walked. I did not watch her go. I looked at Mom. Mom looked back at me. Her eyes were dry. There was something in them I had not seen since the night before my father's funeral. She said one word. Honey, that was all. Honey, I had waited 6 months to say one sentence. It had been 5 seconds long. It was worth every day. The clock had stopped. The church emptied slowly. Some of Hannah's bridesmaids were crying. 2 of Rosalind's gala board friends slipped out the back without saying a word Tonyon. They would not call her again. That was a thing I noticed and filed away as quietly as I had filed everything else for the last 6 months. Whitfield Sr. was let out the side door. His head was down. His shoulders looked smaller than they had at the engagement dinner. Trent was walked through the center aisle. He was crying. As he passed the front pew, he turned his face toward Hannah and hissed one word. Sheriff Holland's hand tightened on his elbow. He kept walking. Hannah did not flinch. We walked out together. Mom, Hannah, me, through the front doors and down the stone steps of St. Andrew's. The afternoon was cold and bright. The grass was December brown. The parking lot was half phones. The other half was old money Chester County trying to figure out which side of history to stand on by Monday morning. Maya came up to us by the Ford Escape. Reading PD picked up Earl at 155. She said he's already lawyered up. Whitfield Sr.'s lawyer is on the phone with the U.S. Attorney's office. Trent is crying in the back of a Berks deputy car. Thank you, Maya. Thank Hannah. That altar speech was professional. Hannah was leaning against the Escape in her wedding dress. Mascara streaked, looking at the December sky. She had not yet taken the dress off. She would not take it off for another 3 hours. She had walked herself down the aisle and she had walked herself back. We drove 47 miles of country road back to Berks County. Mom in the front, Hannah in the back, still in her dress. The Ford Escape smelled like Vera Wang silk and the diner coffee I'd had at 6:00 in the morning. The cornfields along Route 422 were that brown that the Middle Atlantic gets in December. The sun was low. The shadows were long across the road. Mom rolled down her window. Cold air came in. She closed her eyes for a moment and breathed deep. He won't get the back 47, she said. Past tense, settled. Done. Hannah from the back seat. I'm starving. Can we stop at the diner? I laughed. The first laugh I had laughed in a week. Yeah, let's stop at the diner. Mom laughed too, once short, the kind of laugh that comes out of a person who has not laughed in a year and is surprised to find that the laugh still works. We stopped at Hilda's Diner on Route 23 outside Birdsboro. Hannah walked in, still wearing the Vera Wang. The hostess looked at her, looked at me, looked at Mom, and said, "Booth or table?" We took a booth. Hilda came out of the kitchen herself 10 minutes later, set down 3 plates of pancakes, and didn't put a bill on the table. She kissed Mom on the top of her head. She had seen the wedding on the regional news already. The waitress hugged Mom on her way out. That was the moment I started crying. February, the grand jury returned indictments on 8 federal counts against Whitfield Sterling, Sr. He pleaded not guilty. His bail was set at $2 million. He posted it the next morning. The same week, Trent Sterling was indicted on 6 counts. The federal prosecutor offered no plea bargain. In March, Commissioner Earl Mallister resigned. He was indicted on bribery handling to a federal officer. In April, Sterling Development Group lost 3 pending real estate licenses. Their CFO turned state's witness. The company restructured under new leadership by the end of summer. In May, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation publicly announced to the I-78 East extension. The route had been redrawn 3 miles to the north. Mom's farm was no longer in the right-of-way. The agency, asked by reporters about the change, said only that they had reviewed the alignment and determined it was no longer feasible at the original location. In June, Whitfield Sterling Sr. was convicted at trial, 14 years federal. Trent took a guilty plea at sentencing and received 11. Earl Mallister got 6 and a perpetual ban from public office. Rosalind Sterling was never charged. The prosecutors could not prove she had documented knowledge. She lost her gala chair position quietly that spring. The board did not issue a statement. By August, she had relocated to Boca Raton. The farm was reappraised at fair market value for the next 10 years, tax base untouched. Hannah quit Sterling family circles entirely. She came to work full-time at my office that January. She took the LSAT in October. She scored top 15 percentile. She started law school the following fall. One Saturday in April, Mom walked the eastern fence line with a roll of trash bags and a pair of garden shears. She pulled every orange ribbon, cut every stake out of the ground, wrapped them all in a bundle, carried them inside. She burned them in the wood stove with last year's maple syrup labels. By the time the snow melted, the ribbons were ash and Mom was planting Cherokee purple tomatoes in the back 47. One Sunday in May, I drove out to the farm at noon. Mom was in the kitchen washing tomato seedlings at the deep sink. The wedding band was back on her left hand. The chain at her neck was gone. The band had returned to where my father had put it in October of 1981. "Sit down, honey," she said. "Have some pie." I sat. We ate pie. 20 minutes later, Hannah pulled in with 2 casseroles she had cooked at her own apartment the night before. We ate at the kitchen table. The maple sun came through the window over the sink. Mom looked at both of us and said the thing I'll remember as long as I'm alive. "Your dad would be proud of all 3 of us, but mostly Hannah. She did the brave part. Here's what 6 months and 1 wedding taught me. If anyone looks at the person who raised you and whispers that she belongs somewhere lower than where she's standing, y'all don't have to whisper back. You can stay quiet, keep working, build the file, and let the truth speak in the loudest room they own. That's my story. If your mom did everything for you the way mine did, go call her tonight. If this helped, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.